Hey, Post-Row Jen. I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. Today, I'm really excited because we have Catherine Glenn Foster, the president of Americans United for Life, joining me via Zoom, and we are going to dismantle some of the myths you've been hearing in the wake of the Dobbs v. Jackson case, which, as you all know, has made us the post-Roe generation. So Catherine is the president of AUL. She's the president and CEO. She has a JD, so that means she's a lawyer. She's worked for years before she went over to American United for Life. She worked, and that's where I got to meet her, was at her previous position at Alliance Defending Freedom, where she served 7 years there at that law firm. And we all know, if you've ever come to the National Pro-Life Summit, you've heard about ADF and their incredible work. Catherine earned her JD at Georgetown University Law Center, which I'm sure she has many, many stories, being at that such pro-life Catholic school. I see your eye roll there, Catherine. She's also admitted to the bar in Virginia and Washington, D.C., as well as the bar at the U.S. Supreme Court. And she has, I'm not going to read the whole bio because we really need to get into it, but she is credentialed and well-respected in Washington, D.C. In fact, she's the perfect person to have come on to talk about the Roe decision, this Dobbs decision, because she smacks down pro-abortion myths all the time. In fact, she recently did it. You may have seen her. There was a clip online. I didn't even know Catherine was testifying, but she was the sole, you were like the pro-life voice for a bill up on Capitol Hill. You have to realize when, the pro-abortion folks are in charge on Capitol Hill, those in the minority don't really get to set the agenda. They don't get to say how many witnesses get to come and testify. But Catherine was the pro-life voice for a recent hearing on Capitol Hill. And I want you to watch, just real short, the clip that she that she went kind of viral for when she answered and actually questioned a U.S. congressman.
Is candidly and openly calling for a nationwide ban on all abortions with no exceptions for rape or incest. And if I've got that wrong, I would invite Ms. Foster to correct me. Do I have it wrong, yes or no?
If we added rape and incest exceptions, would you vote for it?
Okay, I reclaim my time, of course.
All right, Catherine, that clip was amazing. I think everybody, I was like, yeah, go, Catherine. I was so excited to see you kind of dismantle all of this. What has been your take in the aftermath of Dobbs? What are some of the biggest things that you've seen kind of come up that we really need to respond to in the pro-life movement?
Yeah, post-Dobbs, there is just the same old misinformation that we've always seen. Mm-hmm. We've seen talk about how as soon as, Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion is illegal in all 50 states. When it finally got through to the mainstream media that wasn't the case, they're still trying to kind of make it so in their narrative, right? They're still trying to make it seem like abortion is outlawed. We have to, pass laws so that women can travel across the state line. We have to, pay for women to cross the state line. They're still trying to perpetuate that myth that abortion is now basically banned nationwide. Now, that's the goal, let's be honest.
We've been very clear. That is our goal.
Absolutely, that's our goal, but we're not there yet. That's not what the court decided. We knew that was going to be the next step for us. So, we have a ways to go to get there. Our workload at AUL, and I'm sure yours at SFLA, it just tripled, it quadrupled, on and on.
What's times 50? What's the word for times 50? I don't know, but that's what it is.
I haven't looked that up yet, but that's basically what I need to, I'm like tripled, quadrupled, quintupled. I'm thinking about number of babies, right? I can get up to octuplet.
Yeah, I was like octuplet was the only one I would know.
Exactly, from that like news article years ago. That's all I know. So anyway, that's our situation. We have a long ways to go, but it has not banned all abortion in America, and it's going state by state. So that's one of the pieces of misinformation. Talk about chemical abortion, talk about ectopic pregnancies and what happens if the mother's life is at risk. All these, pieces of misinformation that are out there. We can get more into any of them you want to get into, but that's just the same old misinformation that we're just trying to counter as we always have, because they want to talk about the hard cases, the percent of a percent, the fraction of a fraction of cases. They want to pass law on that, and they don't seem to understand the truth even about those hard cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to start out, today's episode with that clip of you on Capitol Hill, because I mean, when I was on CNN, 2 days after, they brought up rape immediately. Like every single interview brings up, what about cases of rape? And I just find it so dehumanizing, because we know there's so many in our society who have actually been conceived and raped, who are walking around, have families and are productive members of society, didn't instantly turn into rapists as soon as they came of age. But yeah, we talk about them as they're like these awful people, and that they can't be born because of who their father was, and that there's some gene that's going to make them an awful person. So that means they're not worthy of life. That's why I was so excited to see how you kind of answer that question, because you proved through your answer that they're never genuine about this. They're not genuine about caring for a woman who's survived the horror of sexual assault. All they're looking for to do is to justify their extremist abortion views. And that's what we're seeing now. It
doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what exceptions we put in if we wanted to, which we, shouldn't, because you're right. It doesn't help to heap violence upon violence, and both rape, which is, just a horrible tragedy that way too many of us in our society have gone through. But it doesn't help to heap violence upon violence. Yeah. And it has the same root of violence. Anytime we're dehumanizing people, anytime we're saying that someone is lesser, that someone, doesn't get a voice, it has that same root of disenfranchising people and of just pushing the vulnerable down. But no matter what we do, no matter what kind of law we propose, the pro-abortion lobby has never supported it. They don't support health and safety standards. They don't support sanitary standards, at least making sure that they wipe down the counter in a clinic. They don't support mandatory reporting. They don't support, making sure that at least when you have a young girl who's being abused, that they have to at least report that to the authorities. They say, nope, we don't support that. That impedes access. Well, comes back to bite them eventually. It just, all these red herrings they come up with, and they're just throwing anything they can at the problem to try to get people on their side. And they don't seem to realize that, all of it's just a red herring.
Mm-hmm. And they proved that with the Hellerstedt case, right? Where they literally said that access trumped safety. That's why they were fighting and went to the Supreme Court against that Texas law that required, that the abortionists just have admitting privilege at a hospital that was within certain miles. So since you're a lawyer and you've got all this legalese experience, let's break down. I want to break down some of the harder things that we're hearing. So
before we do that real fast, if I can just, say that even it goes back to Gosnell, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Access trumping safety, because the National Abortion Federation, if you haven't heard who Kermit Gosnell is, for your listeners, and all the people who are viewing this, go look at it, find out about that case, read the grand jury report, find out just how disgusting, how racist that clinic was. And just know National Abortion Federation knew, Planned Parenthood knew, everyone knew, but it was this unspoken secret because they didn't want to expose him. They knew it would reflect badly on them. So they just let women walk into that clinic year after year and expose themselves to just the worst horrors. And they did nothing because they said access trumps safety.
Now, AUL, I cite you all a lot of times when I give campus speeches, because you all did a really great like it wasn't an undercover report, but you guys FOIA'd like 20 some states for what was that? What was it called? And where do people find it? Because I use it all the time because I read off like all of the violations and say, okay, AUL found this many violations in this many states over, it was like an 8-year period.
Exactly. So we actually FOIA'd all 50 states, but, you know, a lot of states don't conduct inspections of abortion facilities. You know, if California and some of these states, they're not even reporting abortions, you bet they're not going in and making sure that they're safe and clean, as if they ever could be. But it's called unsafe. And we submitted open records requests to all 50 states and said, you know, this isn't an undercover thing. It's not like a pro-life thing, not a gotcha. We're just trying to collect what the states are doing, you know, neutral government bodies going in and just writing down everything they see, kind of like what they would do at, you know, a McDonald's or something, you know, just writing down, here's how clean it is. Here's how, whatever's going on. And what we found was appalling. Absolutely appalling, just disgusting conditions, you know, table not being wiped down between patients, fridges with, you know, medicine being stored in the same fridge as employee lunches, in the same fridge as fetal remains. There was one Planned Parenthood where they were using the same sponge to sterilize instruments for a week straight, never bothered to clean the sponge. Lack of mandatory reporting. There's one horrible case from Alabama, Planned Parenthood, Birmingham, Alabama, 14-year-old little girl. And when she went into Planned Parenthood, she already had 2 living children. 2 living children at age 14. And Planned Parenthood aborted her 3rd child. And then 4 months later, her 4th child. No questions asked, never reported, just sent her right back into what we can only assume was an abusive situation. Go check that out. We go through all those reports. We go through some of the cases of some of the women who've been harmed or even died from elective abortion, just horrible situations, because we need that as a resource. And our lawmakers need that as a resource so that they know what the truth is. They can counter the abortion industry lies, and they can say, here's what we need to do to try to protect women.
It's awful because I know there's been, you know, stories of, there's a 10-year-old who was pregnant and needed an abortion or whatever. That's the narrative. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's back up. Why is a 10-year-old pregnant? Like, what's going on? Has the rapist been, you know, charged? Like, but we don't ask those questions because as long as we guarantee her right to abort the child, we're good. We're like we're helpful, you know, box checked with helping rape victims or rape survivors because we allowed them to get an abortion. Like it's so messed up.
You don't see Planned Parenthood offering counseling. You don't see them offering, you know, even just connection to the authorities to get some kind of justice. They don't get to the root of the problem.
No. And the mainstream media doesn't even, they just like allow this narrative to go on. That's what.
Yeah, they don't help with parenthood. They don't help with, you know, with adoption hardly. You look at their adoption numbers versus their abortion numbers. Yeah. You know, basically they just hand you a little brochure and they're like, yeah, that's an option too. Yeah. That's all. They do not help. They don't get to the root of the problems. They don't help with, you know, a woman's rent. They don't help with diapers or baby formula or, you know, baby clothes or anything else. All they do is perform abortions. It's just contracept and abort cycle. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a hard question now. So since you're a lawyer, I'm going to, you know, we have been hearing, and it was like immediate after the decision came down from President Biden, Nancy Pelosi, that this decision, because Roe was used on, they've based Roe on this like right to privacy, that gay marriage, interracial marriage, a contraception, all of that now is on the chopping block because of this Dobbs decision. Can you help, you know, folks who are tuning in unpack that myth when they hear it, you know, when their friends, pro-choice friends, you know, spout it off and say, you want to ban interracial marriage and you're a big racist because you're pro-life? I'm sorry, I have to stop laughing because these are serious arguments that people make.
It's such a falsehood. It really is laughable. I would just ask our president to actually read the decision. If he read the decision, he would understand.
I mean, he can only read his note cards when you sit down and who to shake hands with. I mean, that's probably about it.
Yeah, that's true though, because, none of them have apparently read the actual decision. If they had, they would see that over and over and over, the opinion says abortion is different than contraception, different than, gay marriage or any other LGBT issue, different than, than interracial marriage, certainly different than anything else. Yes, it's based on sort of the same line of legal theory, this 14th Amendment substantive due process, yes, but it's totally different. And they said that abortion was what perverted that legal theory, because abortion is different because it takes the life of a human being. They said that over and over. Abortion is different because it takes the life of a human being. So that's it. That's all we have to know. None of these other issues that we talk about, none of the other issues that that some of our leadership, our president, and some of the top Democrats have been talking about, none of those take the life of a human being. And the more we just say that, the more we repeat that truth, the more people will start to, pick up on that. Abortion is different. The court made that clear. And just because they, have the same, constitutional amendment that they're, kind of based on, does not mean that any of those other, rights or privileges are on the chopping block.
Thank you for that. That was really helpful. All right, I'm gonna ask you another hard question. Sorry. Punishment. What historically, because this is immediately, as soon as this decision came out, every interview after they ask about why don't I care about rape survivors and why do I want them to be punished with a baby, quoting President Obama's language, the next question they ask is, well, are you for punishing women? Should women be in jail? If abortion's murder and ending human life, why wouldn't you be for punishing women? And, some states, we do know there were laws on the books pre-1973 that allow for states to prosecute women. We know that did that happen a lot though? Like, because to my recollection, it did not happen. I mean, it was like twice in like the couple years leading up to Roe. But how do we answer that question with compassion and in a way? I think, some pro-lifers struggle with like, yes, if this is murder, if this is ending life, why wouldn't we punish a woman who seeks an abortion along with the abortionist?
Yeah, that's why we need, I think, better high school history courses and, just civics courses so that people understand our governmental system. So across the board, women are not going to be punished for abortion. When we look back at the history and what lawmakers were sorting through in the decades leading up to Roe, they realized a couple of different things. So first of all, they realized that in large part, the woman was a second victim of abortion. When you look at the percentage of abortions, both then and now, still today, that are the result of, pressure or coercion, or abuse, the woman frequently, far from it being her choice, she has very little say or is pressured into that decision, is potentially abandoned, feels like she has no other option. That was my situation when I was 19. I didn't think I had any other option when I walked through the doors of an abortion facility. If I did think I had another option, I wouldn't have been there. So that's step one. The woman is a second victim. And so we don't punish a victim, right? And so, even if, one of those states that had a law in the books, they also had prosecutorial discretion. And so they were able to look at it and say, we're not going to prosecute a woman for this abortion. It would simply be wrong in, I think the vast majority of cases. And so we did not see women being punished for abortion. Second, in fact, it was the abortionists who wanted the woman to be punished for abortion and wanted that to be on the table because they knew that the prosecutors who were trying to prosecute them, the abortionists, that they needed the woman's testimony in order to to be able to prosecute, right? They needed the woman to come into court and say, yes, this is what happened, and be able to testify against the abortionist. And that's not going to happen if the woman is a co-defendant. So it was the abortionist who said, yeah, prosecute the woman, because they knew that that would shelter them. So across the board in our legal system, we have different mitigating factors in different crimes, and we also have different aggravating factors. So, even though a child is a human being and the same as an adult, the same as, a group of people, whatever, a police officer, all human beings, but still, if you are a criminal and you go and kill a child, that's an aggravating factor. If you are a criminal and you go kill a police officer, aggravating factor, even though the police officer is no more human than you or I. But there are circumstances that can mitigate that crime or potential crime. And those circumstances could include, self-defense or abuse or different kinds of situations. So that's what states in the past were able to look at, even though most states said absolutely not, we will not prosecute a woman. Even the ones that, that maybe said it could happen, they still said we're not going to, because it's bad policy. Because number one, the woman is a victim here as well. And number two, we need the woman. We need her testimony, because we need to get to the supply side, not the demand side. The woman who is seeking an abortion, there's been some failure somewhere along the way. Something has gone wrong in her life, whether it's, financial issues or relationship problems or that pressure or the abuse, or some kind of, not feeling ready to be a parent. All of those are areas where we as a humane society, we need to be coming alongside that woman and helping that woman, and never, saying, okay, let's just, bring her into court and, talk about what should happen to her. Now, I co-wrote a white paper on this, on what restorative justice should look like in the context of abortion, and how we can rethink all of this. Because even though the woman should not get thrown in jail, the woman shouldn't be fined, none of that kind of thing, but she does often need help. And again, none of these solutions get to the root of the problem. None of them get to how she got in that situation in the first place, whether it's that, 10-year-old little girl, or whether it's, a woman who's in, desperate financial peril. And so, in my white paper, what we do is explain, different options for how we can get down to the root of the problem and really solve these situations from the inside out, helping the woman, helping the partner, helping, anyone else who is involved, parents, siblings, friends, maybe her institution, if there's a school or a place of business involved, Citibank nowadays. And also looking at the abortionist and that staff and everyone who's involved in this process. What can we do to rethink everything and make sure that we're getting in a very humane, compassionate, loving way to the heart of the problem and solving it?
That's great. I think that's very helpful for us moving forward in our conversations in this, post Dobbs era. Because that is definitely something I think every pro-life advocate is going to have to be able to answer that question. Well, how do we stand up and say abortion ends the life of a unique, whole, living human being that's worthy of life, and then at the same time don't punish the woman. And I think we have to be very clear that she is that second victim of the abortion industry, and that our movement seeks to serve her as well as save her preborn child. And that's what we've been doing for like 50 years with, more than 3,000 pregnancy centers and maternity homes. You would think like people like have caught on by now, but they really haven't. They
have not. We're the ones who care about women. And it's so clear from pregnancy centers to how we handle ectopic pregnancy versus how the other side is treating ectopic pregnancy risks to.
Let me ask you that question. So I'm gonna do a couple of episodes probably on the medical risks, but I was doing an NPR interview, and so they had this audio that was streaming in the middle of my interview of an OB who basically was like, I don't know what to do if women are presenting with life-threatening ectopic pregnancies because now I can't serve them. And is there like anything in the Dobbs ruling that says that women who are going to die, cannot receive life-sustaining and life-saving medical care?
At this point, they are just making stuff up. When it comes to ectopic pregnancy, or at any point in the pregnancy, when it comes to life of the mother kinds of situations, all we have to do is define what an abortion is. It's the intentional killing of a human being. And so treatment for ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion. Life of the mother situations, not an abortion. So what you do with an ectopic pregnancy, literally nothing has changed. We're the ones who actually support the exact same care. The same medicines are on the table, the same interventions are on the, do whatever you have to do in that situation. Doctors can do everything they could before. When it comes to life of the mother situations, and the only thing you shouldn't do is go in and intentionally kill the child. But if you have to deliver the child early, because of whatever medical reason, that's not an abortion. You treat the child as another patient. You try to save the child's life. You do everything you can. Tragically, may not always work, but it's not an abortion because you're not going in and killing the child in the womb. Similarly, if the mom needs like radiation or something, if maybe she has cancer, not an abortion. You're treating the mom. You're doing everything that you can to save both mom and child. Not an abortion. And so it blows my mind that we're still, the abortion industry is making us define what they do, thousands of times on a day-to-day basis.
And what we were talking about before the show started, is I've been very worried. Because what we saw in Ireland and how the abortion industry used this tragedy that happened, a woman who was pregnant who received substandard care. I mean, there were a lot of things that went wrong in that case. They used this woman's death as a justification to legalize, abortion in the nation. And, we were on the ground. We had students on the ground, door knocking and doing whatever we could in Ireland. It was crazy. That's a whole nother story. But we lost that. And so I'm very concerned. Like, it feels like the media right now, especially, is like hunting, and they're like trying to find the woman who dies. And, they're hoping that it's in a red state that's banned abortion. This woman has died from some high risk pregnancy situation. And then they're going to say, see, look, she's died. This is why we need to justify all the deaths from abortion. Literally, I think they're hunting for her.
Without consent.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad you answered the question because I'm very nervous for women who maybe low income, who are in, red states, and who maybe don't have a really good relationship with a doctor, who may then find themselves going to a very pro-choice ideologue, OBGYN, and who'd be like, can't treat that life-threatening ectopic pregnancy right now. I gotta wait to see what legal team says, and sends an email off and says, well, they didn't get back to me. And yes, she ended up bleeding out, but this is why we need abortion. Like, it's not out of the realm. It sounds crazy to suggest that they would be willing to do that, but this is a group of people that openly commits violence in the streets, that have said that it's okay to, even though we don't care about women, but then vandalize all of our pregnancy centers. And this is a group and a whole movement that has been responsible for more than 50 million deaths. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that they won't be too sad if a couple of women die of tragic circumstances, that they could have stepped in and just kind of stood hands off. So I'll leave everybody with that wonderful thought. Sorry, these are the things that go through my mind when you're in the pro-life movement too long, because this is what they're really about. They promote a culture of death and the movement of death. So Catherine, thank you so much for coming on today. It was good to chat with you. Where can folks, follow you, like get this white paper you mentioned about restorative justice? Where can they get more information about AUL?
Yeah, all of our work is available on our website. It's at aul.org. You can find Unsafe there, that resource about, the unsanitary, disgusting conditions in abortion facilities. You can get the white paper there. All of our legal analysis for all your people who want to get much deeper into our analysis of Dobbs and all the other abortion cases through the years. You name it, it's all there on our website.
Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm so glad you got on, because you were able to kind of give us bite-sized pieces of this 90-page decision and kind of get through the legalese. You're one of my favorite lawyers, because you talk like a normal person too. I'm on a panel a couple of weeks with a bunch of lawyers, and I'm like already nervous. I'm like, I don't talk like you. I'm just going to be the bumpkin from West Virginia. It's with the plain speak. So, and maybe cursing a little bit, but maybe not. We'll see. I'll have to watch my caffeine intake that morning. But thanks for coming on. Thank you all for joining us today, Explicitly Pro-Life. I really hope this conversation with Catherine was informative to you. Make sure you take that clip that we showed at the beginning of the episode of Catherine just smacking down the pro-abortion hypocrisy. Share that around social media, because I think it is the perfect circumstance where it shows how the abortion industry really doesn't care about women who've survived sexual assault, but they're willing to use a sexual assault to justify 100% of their abortions. And hopefully you can use the rest of this episode to respond to all of the comments coming in on your social media threads, because everybody who pays attention to this podcast, I fully expect that you've already been posting and tweeting and sharing everything that Students for Life and other pro-life organizations are putting out about this new post-Roe era and what our movement must do now as we move state by state to make abortion unthinkable and unavailable. Thanks, guys.